All right, number one, I got Georgia. Obviously, I mean, they got all the AP votes last week. Didn't take a loss this week, so they are my number one. Ohio State number two, and Indiana played 4 quarterbacks today. They're not a good football team right now, but Ohio State handled their business like in a way that I really wanted to see them do offensively. I didn't care what Indiana scored. What I didn't want to see was like a 24-7 kind of game, and I didn't see it. So I've got them number 2, Alabama number 3. People are going to look at that Tennessee game that was 31-24 at one point in the second half and go, oh gosh, Alabama. They ended up putting 52, I think, on the board against a pretty good Tennessee team, and they made a boatload of mistakes, including roughing the kicker on 4th and 30. They made a lot of big mistakes, and I still think, look, I think Ohio State's probably better right now, but my number 4 is Cincy, and I think Alabama's probably 21 points better than Cincy right now. Michigan number 5. I don't love Michigan at number 5. I don't feel great about it, kind of like I didn't feel great about Iowa in the top 5 a couple of weeks ago because they cannot throw the ball. A lot of people in our chat are reminding us that they cannot throw the ball, and until they do, I'm going to assume that they can't. Just a real quick note on Cincy at number 4. I'm concerned what we've seen against Indiana and now a 7-point win over Navy. That's tough for me. And you're going to play a bunch of nobodies and you're going to beat one of them by 7. That's tough for me, but just win, baby. Ole Miss at number 6. They've moved back up for me. I dropped them a little bit last week. That's a convincing win against a good offense in LSU. LSU's not a good team. They don't have a good defense right now. They got a lot of injuries, but a pretty good offense. Ole Miss won that convincingly. I've got Michigan State at number 7. This is another one that, you got a clean record. At this point in the year, it's a weird year. So if you're undefeated on October 23rd, then I got to do something with you. I don't have a lot of faith in Michigan State right now, but I do think that they should be rewarded for having a clean record. Number 8, people are going to think this is weird. They're going to call me an SEC homer for my next 2. I've got Texas A&M at number 8, and people are going to laugh, but I'm going to say, who do you think is going to beat them? Is Notre Dame?
I've never met this man before. I just want to make that clear.
Is Notre Dame going to beat them? Is Iowa going to beat them? All of these teams have pretty bad losses. Is Coastal going to beat them? Wake, NC State? Maybe Auburn, I don't know, but I've got Texas A&M at number 8, and this is one of those games or teams rankings in end of October that I'll feel pretty good about at the end of the year. I do think they drop one more, but I think in this year of crazy, in an SEC West schedule, if you go 9-3, you're probably one of the top 10 to 15 teams in the country. And this says more about the teams that are screwing up all around them than it does anything else. Kentucky at number 9, because I think A&M would probably beat Kentucky. And I've got Oregon number 10. Oregon, like you said, nearly lost to UCLA today. And I think DTR got hurt in that game and wasn't even playing at the end of the game. Still won that game 34-31. But Oregon is still in my top 10, outside, kind of in striking distance of the playoffs. Even with the loss of Stanford, because this year is a crazy year. That's my top 10. Braves are about to pitch, so give me your top 10.
So did you put Oklahoma in your top 10?
I did not put Oklahoma in my top 10.
And was that on purpose?
That was on purpose.
Okay,
I've dropped them twice. Look, I've dropped Oklahoma twice this year out of my top 10 and put them back in all the way up, I think, to 3rd or 4th last week. Kansas, the badness of Kansas cannot be fully contextualized. And yeah, they pulled that game away. They had a chance to lose. Oklahoma is undefeated. And look, just win, baby. But UCLA, a close win against UCLA is a lot better than a close win against Kansas. I think you should be punished for that. That doesn't mean that I won't be putting them in my playoffs a month from now. But right now, with the game they played today, I mean, I don't think Oklahoma beats Texas A&M or Ole Miss. I can't, maybe they do, but I don't think they would be favored.
Yeah, it's tough because everybody, A&M, I can't give A&M too much credit because I think that Mississippi State loss is bad. Like that's where I get into the you've got to be punished. So I'll tell you they're not in my top 10, but I get the sentiment, which is yeah, but A&M's actually had to play a pretty tough set of teams, and beating Alabama is not something that I think right now Oklahoma's going to do, even with all their
No.
warts. And you got to get credit for the wins too. So I'll start running through my top 10. My number one is Georgia. I think if your number one is not Georgia, you need to sort of look yourself in the mirror and
You're an
question what
SEC homer, Josh. My goodness.
question what you're doing right now. There's just no reason to not have them number one until something proven otherwise, given what everybody else has done. My number two is Ohio State. I think they're playing. I think they're the one team right now, and I know we did a hypothetical. You can find it on our channel where we had Georgia and Ohio State dead even 32 all in a tie. When we ran our model based off those two teams. Ohio State's playing really high level football, much higher level than I think people had. I know they played weak competition, but they were dominating it. It'll be interesting to see how they finish down the stretch. My number three is Cincinnati, just because they've been mostly dominating teams, and frankly, just due to who's behind them. Now that's sketchy for me. I think Cincinnati might be a little bit overranked. I just don't like a lot of what I've seen from basically everybody else in college football. And Cincinnati has mostly taken care of business. Again, today was an exception. Number four for me is still Alabama. I easily could have put them ahead of it, Cincinnati. Maybe I should have, but Alabama continues to sputter. If you look at the final score, it was like 52-24 or something with Tennessee. That's not really what that game was like. Now, down to down, they kind of dominated Tennessee the entire game, or at least what I saw early. But their miscues and errors are almost part of their identity. It's how we sort of started talking about.
I agree.
That's how we started talking about our live show. Like their defense is giving up 3 touchdown busts every game. Their offense goes 3 and out 2 or 3 times a row. It feels like every game. It just seems to be who they are. And so whatever their average quality or whatever their quality team is, they're not there, and I can't put them a whole lot higher until they actually get there. The thing for Alabama is they're not going to really properly be tested until Georgia, so it'll be interesting to see if they can find a way to improve in what was a front-loaded schedule. Ole Miss is my number 5. I continue to hold that Ole Miss is pretty badly underranked and underrated. Their only loss is to Alabama at Tuscaloosa. Otherwise, Ole Miss played a common opponent with Oklahoma in Tulane, beat the crap out of them. They beat Arkansas, who hasn't proven to be a fantastic team, but I mean, they put up 52 in Arkansas, which is a big deal. Narrowly beat Tennessee, who I think is a much better team than people are fully realizing. That close win again, where they maybe could have beaten Pitt, was a big deal. Just resoundingly beat LSU. I'm not sure many teams could do what Ole Miss has done with their schedule, which has actually been a pretty hard schedule. And I don't think many teams would beat Ole Miss right now. I just don't. Now, Ole Miss, I will say at the moment, it has a lot of injuries. And I kind of expect them to drop another game or two because they're out like 2 or 3 receivers, multiple linemen. Running backs have been in and out of the rotation. They're not the same team they were early in the year. And I'm not, at some point it feels like that's going to catch up to them. But I do kind of rank you on where you're at today or where you've been. Oklahoma is my number 6. They're undefeated. And there are not many teams right now that can say they're undefeated and have played well enough to stay undefeated, even looking ugly doing so. Most teams have found a way to lose to bad teams. Now, I'm not going to put them like ahead of Ole Miss or Alabama because they haven't played anyone as good as Texas A&M or certainly Alabama. And so I don't think they would have beaten those teams. But I think it's fair to have them at 6th right now. My number 7 and 8 is Michigan and Michigan State. I have them in that order, but you could almost look at it interchangeably. I don't know where either one's at right now. But again, both are undefeated, which is not something a lot of other teams can say. We're at the point in this listing where the problem is I don't know who to put above them. And they are good defensively. They are competent enough to beat most teams on offense. I think, if you notice Oklahoma, Michigan, Michigan State, there's kind of a similar narrative to there that they've all been consistent enough to beat teams on their schedule, which a lot of teams haven't, but they haven't flashed to me the ability to get up and beat somebody. And I'm still really not sold how they're all going to do in a more difficult part of their schedule. My number 9 is Kentucky. I think, the same vein, you really shouldn't be sleeping on what they've accomplished. And they've had a weak schedule, but beating Florida doesn't look like such a big deal. But it was kind of a big deal. They thumped LSU 42-21. The scary thing is like UT Chattanooga, where they won 28-23. It wasn't quite that close. South Carolina 16-10 was ugly. I don't care that they lost 30-13. I just straight don't, because there's nobody in the country right now other than Ohio State, that I think is going to consistently be within a touchdown of Georgia. And so I can't really say that Kentucky wouldn't have done better than the teams in front of them. My number 10 is Iowa. And this is just the point where I have to put somebody in by default. I think the gap between Iowa and whoever's number 20 is probably not very high. But once you hit, to me, Ole Miss, would you agree with this? Like with my list, I have Georgia, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Alabama, Ole Miss. Everybody out of Ole Miss, and this past Ole Miss, and this includes Oklahoma, has not shown me explosive potential, has not shown me flashes of being a high-level team to make me think they could beat high-level teams in any sort of consistent clip. Basically, Georgia, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Alabama, Ole Miss, if they play their B-plus game, or let's say their A- game or A game, right? I don't know there's anybody below them that can beat the A game of those teams, even on their best day. I haven't seen it. And so you can talk about inconsistency, but it feels like it's just a lot of mush once you hit about sixth.
Yeah, and that's the problem I've had all year. And look, this is a problem in doing a top 10, especially since we do this kind of hybrid power ranking type of thing. And I do think that we do ours with an eye to how you're going to finish, which I think is a good way to do it. But on the flip side, like, it's so hard, which has made it really fun this year, right?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, it's funny, right? Everybody talks about wanting 2007 and the chaos of 2007. The defining aspect of 2007 was that everybody kind of looked like crap at some point in the year and lost a stupid game. Like, that's how you have chaos. You don't have chaos by everybody looking awesome. You have chaos by people losing games they shouldn't lose, and we all say, well, they suck.